everybody.
Good morning.
I am Kelly Jackson.
I am Jamie Schwartz.
And welcome to Women Changing Our World.
This is it. We're
Jamie,
here.
We have the most amazing show today.
I know.
We are so lucky to have this interview.
I know.
Rabia,
Yes.
who wrote this amazing New York Times bestseller book.
Right.
She also has done multiple podcasts with over 300 million listeners.
It's
Wait,
wild.
do you know how many people that is, Jamie? That is more than everybody in the United States.
I know. She is so... And
she helped start the Serial podcast. She got that in the works.
Right.
She did this amazing HBO documentary series
Yes.
that I've watched now twice.
Yes.
Because there's so many details and things in
Right.
like the documentary. And it's called The Case Against Adnan Syed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have HBO, check that out.
Yes.
I'm sure many of you watching have read her book, have listened to her podcast.
Right.
Jamie and I have been researching and digging in to all things Rabia for
Right.
like the last 2 weeks. Jamie cannot stop talking about it.
Right. And I've been up till 3 o'clock in the morning almost every night. And I have been talking to people and getting some questions and just really learning more. And you know what's wild, I think, about Rabia's new book that she just wrote last year is that even if you've seen the Serial podcast, the book gives so much more detail, and it really gives sort of a firsthand look into Adnan's life and who he really is and what his demeanor is and all that. So it's a beautiful, beautiful story.
Okay, do you know what I think is fascinating before we get Rabia on? So there are a lot of, and I want to ask her this. There are a lot of cases of people
Right.
that say that they are incarcerated that are innocent.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And you see them on the news and you hear about other podcasts or other TV shows.
Right.
But for some reason, this Adnan story,
Right.
has had more publicity and more interest than any other.
Right.
And I wonder why that is. I mean, it's a very fascinating, interesting story.
It is.
But I'm sure there's a lot of other fascinating, interesting people that are incarcerated that shouldn't be as
Right.
well. So I want to ask her that.
So
What's
many
like the one
twists-
thing you really want to know?
So many
One thing.
twists and turns. I think we should get into the little nitty gritty and ask her a few of the questions that everyone wants to know.
Yeah. And hey, guys, before we get Rabia on,
Yeah.
we are going to be giving away 5 of her books.
Yes.
So if you like our page and share this video, the first 5 people to like our actual page and share this video right now, we're going to send you one of her books.
Yes.
So and share it.
It gives me chills just looking at her book. Like I love, I'm a huge fan of hers, and it's really just such a touching, beautiful story.
Yeah. So should we get her on?
Are we
Because,
ready?
we have so much to ask
do-
her and so many things to say and so many questions. Like this is going to take up the whole hour.
Rabia asked me how long the interview was going to be, and I told her that it could potentially be 6 months.
I can share it. It gives me...
Hello.
Hi, Rabia.
Hi, Rabia.
Hi, how are you?
I think it's connecting. Can you see us and hear us? There she is.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
We are so excited. I cannot tell you how much research and reading and listening and watching we have done about Adnan's story in the last 2 weeks. Like Jamie and I are on the phone for hours at a time, like asking each other questions like, how is this possible? So we're so excited to have you on and kind of hear your side of things, because you're the one that is like in the most know. So let's begin about, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and like, how did you get involved in this crazy, twisty, turny story of Adnan?
To tell you a little bit about myself, I'm an attorney. I was in law school when Adnan was arrested, and Adnan is my younger brother's best friend.
Okay.
And so I've known Adnan since he was about 13 years old, and they would hang out at the house. I was in law school. I already lived in in the neighboring state in Virginia, and I was married and I had a kid. So it wasn't like I was close to Adnan or anything, but I knew him, and everybody in the community knew him because he grew up there. He was just the sweetest boy. And then I had I would visit my parents on the weekends, and I would see the story run over and over again of this young girl, Heyman Lee, who's been missing. And then I saw the story that, her body had been found. And then, I don't know, weeks later that Adnan was arrested. I was literally watching TV when the news announcement broke that somebody was arrested in her murder. And I was in shock, and I knew it just wasn't possible in any reality. For anybody who knows him, this is not possible. And ever since then, I've been involved.
Wow. So we have so many questions. So let's start at the beginning, because you mentioned that. So Hay went missing. They found her body at the park, right? And
yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the person who found her body?
Oh yeah, his name is Alonzo Sellers, and he is a really interesting character because we know absolutely there is no way he found the body the way he said he found the body. It's not possible at all for so many different reasons. And so the real question is, why is he lying about how he found the body? He was very antagonistic on the witness stand. For those who saw the documentary, you actually see video footage, and I'm talking about the HBO documentary came out last year. You see video footage from the trial when he testified and how confrontational he was. He was not, and if he had nothing to do with the crime, or he had nothing to hide, like he has no reason he's just reporting how he found the body. But, this guy has a history of streaking and doing weird things. He doesn't have any violence in his history, but my suspicion is that, to be honest, he might have seen something. He might have seen somebody leave the body, or he heard about it, and he went looking for it. Because even the city surveyor who was called to the crime scene has said repeatedly he could not see the body when he was standing there. Like, they knew the body was there, but he couldn't see it. And so there's no way Alonzo Sellers pulls over on the opposite side of the road, crosses 2 lanes of traffic, goes 120 yards to take a leak. This man is a streaker.
Right. And didn't he live close to the park? Like, why was he stopping to go to the bathroom when he was so close to his house?
Yeah. He was like a mile away from his house. He was a couple of miles away from work. So, that's the thing. The story doesn't make sense. He failed the first polygraph. The missing answer is, why is he lying? Like, what really happened that he feels the need to cover it up?
Right, which is
we don't know.
It is very, very strange.
And then, tell me if this is correct. On February 12th, the police got an anonymous call to look at Adnan. Is that right?
Maybe. We know it's in the records. Right. We don't know if the call actually happened or not, because, and this is my colleague Susan Simpson, who's like a brilliant investigator and attorney, doesn't actually believe the call happened, because they were already looking at Adnan or earlier than that. February 4th, they started pulling his driving records. They didn't even know that Heyman Lee was dead at this point. They just knew she was missing. But they had pulled Adnan's driving records. They had pulled him over on a seatbelt infraction or something. They had already started investigating him, and he was the only one they were investigating. And so when you watch the documentary, the detective who says he got that call was in the documentary, and he's like, well, we wouldn't have focused on Adnan if we hadn't gotten that call. So they really needed a premise. Right. They couldn't be like, well, he's the Muslim ex-boyfriend, so that's why we focus on him. They needed a premise. So we don't know if that call existed or didn't exist. And the real reason we suspect it didn't is because at trial, Adnan's attorney wanted to cross-examine the detective, ask him about this call, and he could not be found anywhere. We couldn't serve him. Like, she sent her investigator to the police station over and over and over. This guy was hiding. He refused to testify. And so basically that's how he dodged being served.
Can you refuse to testify?
Well, if you haven't been served the subpoena, you can just say, I wasn't served the subpoena. So they spent, I don't know how many weeks trying to serve him the subpoena, and he just dodged it. So, what is he avoiding having to say under oath, I guess is the question. Right. But that was, the cops themselves say that was the turning point. That's when we started looking at Adnan, but that's not true. They were looking at him before.
Okay, so then what happens after Adnan gets arrested?
What do you mean, in the case or in the community?
No, in the case and the community, because I know that the community, really rallied behind Adnan and his family.
They did because they knew the family, they knew Adnan, and none of this was remotely possible. So But the crazy thing is, at the time, everybody in the community, including Adnan himself, thought they just had a lot of faith in the U.S. justice system because they had no interaction with it, they had no experience with it, and they thought this will all get sorted out. They will soon release him. Adnan thought he was going to go back home because he had homework due the next week. Nobody really thought it would make it to trial. At trial, everybody thought this will be cleared up. And then, of course, everybody lost hope. But after he was arrested, what was interesting, some of the interesting things that happened in the investigation. Now, again, Hay had a boyfriend at the time, Don. He was never investigated. They never took hair samples from him. They didn't take blood samples from him. They didn't fingerprint him.
One bit. I don't like him one bit.
Well, if you read the book, I don't like him very much either.
I don't like him one bit. Don, if you're watching, I don't like you one bit.
Look, here's the thing. Don could be completely innocent,
Yes.
but the way the investigation was left did not allow us to have that closure because they didn't take any forensics from him to match. And all these forensics are out there. They don't match anybody.
Right.
They don't match Don. They don't match Jay or Hay. It's like, who does it belong to?
Right.
It's crazy.
And I think you would also think, I've never been thankfully involved in anything like this, but if you're innocent and someone that you love goes missing, wouldn't you be doing everything? It's cut my hair, take my, whatever you need to do to help find the person that did this to your loved one.
Well, they never even asked him for that. I mean, if they had asked and he had said no, but I do think, it's hard to know how people react in certain situations, but what I find very odd is the fact that he himself has said and others said that she was supposed to see him that night. She didn't show up. He didn't make any, people say Adnan never called Hay or paged her again. Don never paged her again.
Right.
Adnan's not with her anymore. He has no reason to page her or call the house. He can't call the house because her family's doesn't allow boys to call the house. But also Don is unaccounted for, in all those hours. We have literally zero idea where he is. We are pretty sure he was not actually working that day. Mm-hmm. He did not contact the police have been trying since 6 p.m. to contact him. He did not call them back until after 1 a.m. that night.
That is insane. Okay, so when Adnan got arrested, first of all, he got arrested how many days after they found Hay's body?
He was arrested about just 3 weeks. I think they found February. It was 9th or 12th. I think it was February 9th, and he was arrested at the end of February. So it was just a few weeks later.
Okay, so if someone asked me what I did last or 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday,
yeah,
I could tell you what I probably do on a Wednesday, right? But I wouldn't know every detail of where I went, who I saw, who I talked to. So what did Adnan say he was doing that day Hay went missing?
I mean, the notes, the detective have very sparse notes from their 6-hour interrogation. Remember, they wouldn't let his attorney in the room.
And didn't record it.
They didn't record it. His attorney was outside the jail, but they wouldn't let him in. And they've got it as juvenile. But it's literally just a few, half a page of notes. There's hardly anything there. But from the get-go, Adnan's, when the attorneys finally did get in, he wrote a schedule out saying, this is my daily school schedule, and this is what I do, and this is what I believe I was doing. And he just had a routine that he had track practice, and after school he would just kind of have to spend time doing something until track practice. So he would go to the library, or he would go home quickly and get a snack. That was it. Then he'd come back for track practice. But this is Ramadan as well. And for people who are not observant Muslims, the last 10 days of Ramadan for practicing Muslims are incredibly intense. People are, your nights are booked. Every night you are at the mosque. You just are. There's just no way around it, pretty much, especially for Adnan with his family. And so, those last few nights, and those are the last few nights of Ramadan for him that year. So, he remembered what he remembered, and he wrote it down over that summer. We have at least, I think, 3 sets of documents in which he wrote down his schedule, what he did. This was one of the problems I had with Serial was, it opened up, it really drew you in immediately, what were you doing 6 weeks ago? But the problem is that wasn't entirely true for Adnan. He actually had a pretty good idea of what he was doing that day, and he had written it down multiple times for his attorneys. He had written down that he saw Asia at the library with her boyfriend. So the idea that he had absolutely no idea is far-fetched. Could he prove it? No. I mean, there's nothing no smartphones. There was no like. But
Right.
he had told his attorney to check his emails, and he had in the attorney documents he had written his email login and password. So he's clearly telling his attorney, I think I was checking my emails. Check my emails, and nobody ever did.
Okay, so how are they allowed to question? We have Katie Henry asking this question live. How are they allowed to question him without his attorney because he was a minor?
They're not allowed to do it, but what do you do in the moment when it happens? Now, Adnan, luckily, is a smart enough kid where he immediately, when he realized that this is like serious and he's not, like, they actually, I don't think it was until that interrogation that he was like, they think I killed her. Like, that's when it hit him. And he was like, okay, I need an attorney. And he really held his ground on that. And so, but many others don't, and many others fold, And so they get away with this all the time. We see this happen all the time, especially in juvenile cases and wrongful convictions. All you can do is legally deny or legally like challenge any interrogation or anything that's anybody tries to admit in court in that situation that his interrogation was out of bounds, whatever. But they never tried to admit it anyway. So what are you going to do with that challenge?
That's insane. So right now on Facebook, we have 13 states watching and 4 different countries watching you.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So hopefully we can get this word out. So I have a question, because what really fascinated me, and I was, very interested in, especially what you talked about it so much in the documentary, were Adnan's phone records. Like, Jamie, we had so many questions about Adnan's phone records, right?
Questions about Adnan's phone records. And I also think that it's important to kind of maybe talk about what Maryland was like at this time. So what was Maryland also like at this time in regard to Muslims? Like, what were the perceived kind of view of Muslims? And was there any reason to really question the police? And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is before 9/11, so it's not that Muslims are generally like considered a fifth column or something. But they're also not a known commodity. They're just like, people just didn't know the Muslim community. The police had no interaction with the Muslim community. They did not know them at all, and vice versa. There was already enough stuff out there, and historically and in pop culture, that primed people to be suspicious of Muslims. Like the film that haunts me to this day, Not Without My Daughter, that came out, I don't know when it came out in the 80s, but it was all about how Muslim men treat women, and it was one particular story, but I cannot tell you 20, 30 years later, people still ask me, isn't that how Muslim men treat? I saw that movie. So Sally Fields really, screwed us with that one. But,
Right.
And, we already had a couple of Gulf Wars. The World Trade Center had been attacked once. It wasn't like, you had the Iran hostage crisis, and people conflate all of that, right? So that's, I guess, how people viewed the community, but it wasn't overt necessarily. And beyond that, we're talking about the 1990s, when I would say criminal misconduct among the police themselves in many, many jurisdictions was rampant. We've had so many exonerations. Most of the cases that I have worked on, 22 in the last 5 years, have come out of the 1990s. It's not like, and there's a reason for that. It's because there was this new interrogative technique called the Reed technique that the police officers had started using. A lot of things were happening at the time, and there was a culture of corruption. So in Baltimore itself, we've seen multiple exonerations of innocent men who were arrested and convicted in that same era, investigated by the same detectives that worked on Adnan's case. And the reason they were exonerated, because these detectives just engaged in misconduct. They coerced witnesses, they planted evidence, and that's still happening in Baltimore. Baltimore police, the whole thing needs to be like started from the ground back up.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, so
Do you have a question?
In your book, which is amazing, everyone can see it, Adnan's story. It was an amazing book. Jamie read it, in like 2 days, I think Jamie did. And so, you really get into the nitty gritty, which I like. And, you have a lot of documents in here that are really helpful, I think, for the reader. Jamie, don't you think those were helpful? Because there's so many details in this.
There's so many. And what I was telling you before is what I love about the book is that even if you've listened to Serial, if you've listened to undisclosed, if you've listened to Truth and Justice, which are all podcasts that came out about cereal, right? Look at Rabia. She's like, Jamie is obsessed with this. But if you've listened,
I'm like, yes, Jamie.
if you've listened to all this and you've looked at all of the copious notes that are out there from every lawyer, from Susan Simpson, from everyone,
Right.
your book really continues to tell this story. And I feel like there's even more information. You dive so deep in it, and I really feel like it gives Adnan almost like more of a voice. Like it's like, this is a human being that something happened to, a 17-year-old kid. That, and like I told you before also, that in the beginning of the book, I don't want to spoil it for everyone, but in the beginning of the book, Rabia shares Adnan's letter to Sarah Koenig before Serial started. And basically, you and Rabia, you can fill this in better, but Rabia basically says, hey, Adnan, this is what we're doing. We're looking at doing this podcast. How do you feel? And, Adnan's kind of like, oh, God, here we go again. But he writes this letter to Sarah, and he basically lays out this thing that's like, I don't know if you believe me or not, but here's my view on it. And I'm a 17-year-old kid. I was in love with this girl who, to this day, he still says was one of the most beautiful relationships of my life. I loved her. I thought she was smart. She was everything to me. And I think that everyone can put themselves in that position of being a high school student and just being in love in that time, which I think is like so like heart-wrenching.
Yeah, okay, so we're getting a lot of questions on here. I want to change directions a little bit because, Jamie, I know this is one of your favorite topics to talk about, too. I want to talk about Jay. Tell us about Jay. How did he get involved in this? Because how did he get involved in general with Adnan? And then we can move into kind of more details about Jay. Like, his story kept changing. Like, where is Jay now? Like, all those things. So give us a little intro to Jay.
So Jay Wiles, used to go to had graduated a year earlier from the same high school that Adnan and Hay went to. He was known in in their friend circle because one of the other students that they were very close with was Stephanie McPherson, and he was her boyfriend for a number of years. And so because he was her boyfriend, he was part of that kind of circle of friends. But they weren't like friends. It was just like, he was the boyfriend of the friend type of thing. So how did Jay get involved? I think it's a great question, because the truth is that I spent maybe 15 years thinking Jay did it. Because Sarah Koenig sets this up in the beginning. She's like, it's either Adnan or Jay. And that's what I thought, too. Yes. And the reason I thought that is because I knew nothing about how the criminal investigations and policing work. I knew nothing about it. That is not my field of practice. I practice immigration and civil rights law. So I didn't understand this. It wasn't until much later, really after Serial, because obviously Sarah wasn't able to answer that question of why does Jay lie? How do you, what did she say? How do you map somebody's dream or whatever like that? It was Susan Simpson who figured it out. And it completely tracks with what happened in other investigations in wrongful convictions from that era. The reason they got to Jay was because they really thought, they knew Adnan had a cell phone. They knew he had his car that day. And then they got screwed when they realized that on that day he had neither his cell phone or his car. And they're like, wait, what's going on here? So I think their original theory was like Adnan followed her out of school. But then they're like, shit, who had the car? And Jay Wiles had the car. And Jay Wiles became a useful pawn in the whole thing. Here's the thing. They have nothing to connect Adnan to this crime. Right. Nothing. No forensics. No witnesses. They're pretty sure he was at school all day. How do you come up? What story do you construct? And so Jay fell into the trap. And the way they really used Jay was this. If they had arrested Jay as an accessory or something, the minute they arrest him, Jay can say, I demand an attorney. And they have to provide him, if he can't afford one, with a public defender. But they did not charge him. All they kept doing was bringing him in for interrogation after interrogation without charging him. And he's a 19-year-old black kid. He's a kid in Baltimore whose father's in prison, whose brother's in prison, who knows that black men in Baltimore can be killed by the police. And he was then told by the white prosecutor, and the reason I know this is Jay's own attorney told me this 5 years ago, that he was told by the white prosecutor that I'm going to charge you with a murder if you don't become a state's witness. I'm going to charge you in the county, not in the city. The county is white, and I'm going to ask for the death penalty, which at the time Maryland was a death penalty state. Tell me what person, and that's why Jay's story could never stick. He didn't have a story. He kept trying to give the police what they wanted, and what would happen is the police would continue their investigation, and then they would say, oh, we messed this up, you got to change your story. Every time the police found something new, Jay's story would change to match what they found. And Susan Simpson's the one who was finally able to map the nightmare of his statements, because I can't tell you, I'm in this room right now that's, if you see, I don't know, I'm like, it's like full of documents and files, and like, this is my investigative war room.
God, Rabia, I want to go through all of these files. I want to be in your room going through all of these files.
Yeah, and so, we have a spreadsheet that's like this thick that was made just to track all the changes in the statements, and we still couldn't figure out why does he keep changing. And then Susan figured it out. Jay was screwed. Jay has nothing to do with this crime, as far as I'm concerned. And Jay was coerced, like other witnesses have been, by these same detectives to lie. And then they charged him. Then they charged him as accessory, and he didn't spend time in prison. And now I think he's just full of fear that that if he comes forward, then they could charge him. Because here's the thing we always have to remember. The only person connecting Adnan or Jay to the crime is Jay. It's his statements.
Right.
Nobody else has ever done that. The forensic, they took Jay's blood, they took his hair, fingerprints, nothing matches anything.
And didn't Jay say to his ex-girlfriend, who he has a child with, on the phone, that he basically just said whatever the cops wanted him to say, and he really just made it up? Didn't he say that?
Yeah, if you watch the documentary in the final episode, he said that not only to the girlfriend, but he also said it to the documentary director, Amy Berg. And they wrote it they typed it out on the screen in the documentary that Jay basically told her that I was never at Best Buy. They told me to include Best Buy in the story, so I did. I mean, none of it happened. None of that happened. And so the real tragedy here is because none of that happened, nobody's ever tried to figure out what actually did happen to Hay.
So
go, Jamie.
So. And I agree. I'm trying to be partial because we're doing this thing, but I just want to. So what about? So the other thing, two things that have always bothered me. So Don, for one of know, Don, the timesheets. So Don was Hayes' new boyfriend, right after Adnan. Yeah. Don was Hayes, and they never investigated Don. They found out now that his timesheets were falsified at LensCrafters. No one knows about Don's day. No one knows. Why was he never a suspect? And now, when we're finding out all this new stuff, can Don be questioned?
The only way Don could be, he was never a suspect because I think from the get-go, the family had brought in this woman. She was like a cultural consultant. At this time, they had no idea if Hay was dead or alive. She just disappeared. And this woman, basically, her theory was that it's the Muslim ex-boyfriend because it's like their culture and their faith and that's just how they are type of thing. And she wrote a whole memo for the police and the prosecution to that effect. And so they just never took Don seriously. But the detective in the case at the time before the case got transferred to the city, this is in the county, did ask Don's manager, was he at work? And she said, yeah, he was. What he did not realize was that was Don's mother he was asking. And he never asked for actual documentation. He didn't ask for the actual timesheets. Because I can understand as a detective, if you're talking to the manager of a store, you're not thinking this person has any reason to hide or there could be fault. Right. You have no reason to suspect it. So they were just like, that's the end of this case. I mean, or that's the end of him being a suspect. Now, can he be investigated now? He can only be investigated now. We don't have police powers, obviously. Is if Adnan gets if the case is reopened, if charges against Adnan are denied or dropped, or if he gets a new trial and is acquitted. But in those cases, usually the state they're just kind of done with it. However, right now, people keep asking what we're doing. We're working on a new appeal, but we're also there's a lot of forensic evidence that has not been matched to anybody. Right. And if we can match it to whoever it belongs to, I don't know if it's Don, I don't know who it belongs to, then that will exonerate Adnan fully. It'll fully exonerate him. And so, maybe Don's reckoning or whoever it is that killed her, the reckoning is still coming. I hope. That's my prayer, is that that we're really able to give full justice to Hay and Adnan by actually finding who did it.
Right, and I saw in the documentary and then, researching this whole case that, DNA was taken, obviously, from a whole bunch of different places. And then Adnan's attorney decided to test some of the DNA, right? Like from Hayes' fingernails and the rope found in the park and some other things. And it didn't match anything, right? And if she was killed in the car, like the police said it happened, there would obviously be a struggle because she was being strangled. And I'm sure she was fighting for her life, kicking, screaming, scratching, biting, whatever she could do. So you would think whoever's DNA is on her or under her fingernails would be the killer, right?
Yeah, so, the forensic in this case include a lot of different things. There's hair found on her body that was human hair that wasn't matched to anybody. There were animal hairs found on her body. So maybe the person who did this had a pet. They wanted to match like soil from Lincoln Park to Adnan, something like Adnan's shoes. So they took his shoes, they took samples from his car, everything, nothing matched. There were 16 sets of fingerprints, I think, or maybe in the car that didn't match anybody, and they just like, oh well, if it does, they just kind of let it go. The DNA, we were told in 2009 when we first started pursuing DNA testing, we got a letter from the Baltimore City the police saying all the evidence in this case has been destroyed. Like, we actually have that letter. It's been destroyed.
How can that even be how does that even happen? How can they do that legally?
Evidence gets destroyed. My guess is I don't think they were covering anything. I think they were being lazy, because you can Google Baltimore City evidence locker. The pictures I've seen of that place are horrific. It's just a disaster. You'd think it's just files everywhere. It's just a mess. And I think what happened was, the reason it finally got tested in 2 years ago, was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, in 2000, whatever it was. It wasn't because suddenly we discovered there was DNA out there. We still had no idea. We had no idea whether the forensic evidence existed. It's because the Attorney General had decided, because we had won 2 appeals, we were waiting for the results of the final appeal. The Attorney General had decided, well, I'm going to offer him a plea, because everybody thought they were going to lose. He's like, I'm going to offer him a plea deal, but just to cover my bases, to make sure I'm not offering a plea to somebody who could be guilty, I'm going to have the evidence DNA tested. That's when we learned that evidence still exists. Like, we didn't know this until then. And then it was a negotiation between him and Adnan's attorney about what would be tested.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the Attorney General that decided what would be tested. When they did the testing, nothing matched Adnan. Nothing. But they also didn't find a lot of stuff. They found under her fingernail a female allele. It's like a part of a cell. I guess I don't know the technical term for it. That didn't belong to Hay, but nobody knows who it belonged to. But even in that, they only tested a few things. There's other things that still remain untested, and so we want to do that. But also, there's this whole new branch of DNA testing that's opened up called genetic genealogy, where if it doesn't match somebody because that person's not in a database, right? Because it's only going to match if you are actually in a database already. You have a criminal record. Right. Genetic genealogy has helped, like, convict, the Golden State Killer and others. They use basically all these databases that are out there, 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and they try to find the closest family match and narrow down suspects like that. So that's still possible too.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about Asia.
Asia.
So Adnan said that he was at the library. Asia had written a letter, right, to Adnan, 2 letters to Adnan's attorney, saying like, "Hey."
No, to Adnan
to
himself,
Adnan.
not to his
Okay.
attorney.
So then, what happened to those letters that Asia had sent?
What happened was Adnan gave them to his attorney. So, his attorney had told him, listen, your friends from school are going to contact you. Like, don't talk to anybody. And she was right. That's what you tell a defendant, because the last thing you want is for any of those people to become valuable witnesses at a trial, and their credibility is destroyed because the prosecutor says, oh, wait a minute, weren't you in contact with him the whole time afterwards? Did he help you craft a story? So your best bet is to basically shut out everybody, which is also crazy, because then you don't have a lot of ways to figure out what really happened, right? Like with people you can kind of fact check yourself. So he got these letters. He gave them to his attorney. He asked her a couple of times, did you contact this witness who says she was with me that day and can corroborate that I was there? And Gutierrez came back to him and said, I did talk to her, and she told me, and we couldn't verify the date. She had her dates wrong. It was not January 13th that she was with you. It was a different day. And Adnan let it go, because what is he supposed to do? He had never, this is like before the trial began, and I didn't know anything about this. And I didn't know until the day he was convicted that Asia McClain existed. And that's when I hunted her down. And when I contacted her, Asia said, nobody's ever contacted me, not Adnan's attorney, nobody. And she was like, I just figured, I guess whatever I had to say wasn't important to the case, because if it was, he would have contacted me, or his lawyer, or somebody would have contacted me.
I mean, Cristina Gutierrez is a whole other thing. I mean, as counsel and representative, I can't believe that, Adnan wasn't granted a new trial just based upon that and all the things that came out about her.
I agree.
She was ineffective to a criminal,
right.
To a criminal, I mean, she, and it wasn't just Adnan's case. She, she screwed up so many cases that she broke the record for attorney-client grievances in the state of Maryland. Right. She broke the bank on the grievance fund where they compensate. And by the way, Adnan was denied. He applied for the grievance fund, saying that he was denied. So there were other cases she mucked up even worse. And so, and that's what happened. We lost by one judge who decided that Cristina Gutierrez, he said, she did fail her duty, but it did not prejudice Adnan, which is crazy to me. It's like, how basically what he's saying is, if Asia had shown up in the trial, it wouldn't have made a difference. It would have made all the difference in the world.
What is his alibi?
It would have made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
So Adnan goes to jail. You guys, or Adnan's attorney, with your support and family support, apply to get a new trial, right?
After he's convicted?
Yeah, like he's been in jail for years and years.
I mean, he's been in prison now for over 20 years. I think it's been, over 20 years. I mean, like, it's not a matter of applying to get a new trial. You have to get a conviction overturned and have a judge grant a new trial. And so all we've been really asking for is for him to get a new trial. We're not saying free him. Right. We're not saying exonerate him, drop charges. We're saying give him a fair trial with an attorney, number one, that is competent, and a courtroom that is not rife with anti-Muslim bigotry and bias. That's what we're asking. And forensic evidence that we can now actually draw from, which was none of that was presented in court the first time around.
So you won that. So you won the appeal.
And remember, the other thing we haven't brought up is the lividity. Like when you're talking about these different characters, what about Hay? What about the evidence of Hay's body that shows that what the state is saying happened could not have happened to her? She was not killed and dumped in the way they said. So all of this was never explored at the first trial.
Because their timeline was wrong, right? Because of the lividity, she couldn't have been buried at 7:30 in the park, right? The earliest could have been like 10:30, I think, if I remember.
Yeah, there's no way.
It would have been at least 10 to 12 hours would have been the earliest. And we actually suspect that she was not left in Lincoln Park for weeks.
Right.
We don't think she would, because there is such little, when somebody's been, when a body's been left for 6 weeks exposed to the elements, and it was January, but I want you guys to go back and look at the temperatures.
Right. Snowing.
It was a warm January, so there were freezing temperatures, and then it would go to 70, and there was freezing. Now I want you to take a piece of meat. I want you to freeze it, thaw it, and it will decompose so quickly. In 6 weeks, it'll be very decomposed. There will be a lot of animal activity. None of that existed for her. So we are pretty comfortable thinking that she probably had only been left there like in the week or two prior to being found.
And what were those diamond-shaped marks on her shoulder?
Yeah. There was these very, and they never came up at trial. They never came up in serial. I mean, this is like the only real evidence we have is her body, to be honest. But there are these diamond-shaped marks on one shoulder. I think it's her right shoulder. It's very prominent. It's a really clear double diamond outline. And I think I have a picture of it in the book.
Yeah.
On the other shoulder, it's a little, it's there, but it's not as clear. But here, it's very clear. So something that was a solid double diamond shaped thing, she had to be resting on it for at least 10 to 12 hours to leave that impression. Because what happens is when the body rests that long, then afterwards, no matter what you do, it's not going to go away. It just stays there because that's lividity. So nobody's ever figured it out, although we have an amazing new investigator who's been working with us pretty much since the beginning of this year. And she has come up with 2 really strong theories. For my part, and most of the internet, including Reddit, we haven't even been able to find anything that could closely that would even match those. But this investigator has found 2 different items that she thinks matches. And so I'm pretty excited about that.
Is one of them that
because,
concrete tool?
No, it's not that concrete. I know the concrete tool was brought up in the documentary, and I'm not saying that's not possible.
But these are better.
Well, we don't know. I mean, it could be that, but the point is, between the animal hair, there's more to the story. We got, you know what I mean? We got to figure out where these things came from.
Listen, I thought, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, obviously. I'm not involved in the justice system, but I thought when you convict somebody, it has to be without a doubt, right? Like there can't be reasonable doubt that it could possibly be someone else. But there's so many different people that it could possibly be. Even as an outsider, like how is it as a juror that you could convict him? I guess because all of this evidence wasn't presented, right?
Well, yes, that's the biggest reason why. Not only was no evidence presented, Gutierrez didn't present an alternative story. And in the courtroom, in the media, in advocacy, the best story wins. Whoever tells the best story wins. And so the prosecution had a story. They laid out their story. They had charts and maps. And this is by the way, like the first time ever cell phone evidence had been used in a court of law in Maryland. So nobody knows what the hell they're doing. However, to a jury, it's like that CSI effect. Right. Oh my gosh, these are Now, this is a jury in 1999 of, I would say, middle-aged and older people who know very little about cell phone technology, who are being showed, and what they're being showed is that this is incontrovertible. This is hard scientific proof, and this is our story that we've created around these pings. But there's no alternative story. Gutierrez not only did not dismantle it the prosecutor's case, the state's case, the way a criminal trial works is the state presents their case, then the defense presents their case. The state presented their case, I think, for like 5-6 weeks. Gutierrez's case lasted 2 days. That was her time to tell a story, and she didn't do that. And that's what happened.
She did such an awful disservice. She did an awful job. So, do you ever, or have you ever spoken to Hayes' family? Are they still convinced that Adnan is the right person, or are they just going along with what the justice system has told them?
Question.
I mean, I haven't spoken to them, and I don't know to what extent they're following anything. And the reason, people might wonder about that, again, the way the system is set up, nothing would be more inappropriate than for me or anybody close to Adnan to reach out to them, because it can look like duress or harassment. Sure. Or like I'm intimidating them in some way, right? Like you don't want to ever do that. So, and you don't want to do that with witnesses. I talked to Asia that one time, and you can ask Asia. I never contacted her ever again, because I did not want to even leave the impression that I could ever have pressured her in any way. So you got to leave it as clean as possible. So we never. But I have always said, and I'll say this again over and over and over again. If Hayes' family, her community, anybody who knew and loved her, if they really ever want to sit down and go through the evidence with me, with our investigators, with our podcast team, anybody, I would be so happy to do it, because they've been fed a lie, and this is not uncommon. And the state's always set it up so it's like victim's family versus defendant's family, and they will always believe the state. And it's painful also when you have resolution to suddenly be even consider maybe I was wrong about everything, and maybe the person who killed my daughter is still out there, and maybe this man who's innocent is paying the price. So they have every reason to resist accepting that Adnan's innocent.
So was Adnan ever offered a plea deal?
Yeah.
He was, right? And he didn't accept it.
He was offered a plea deal about 2 years ago, and that's the plea deal that they show in the documentary. He didn't accept it because the plea. I mean, they wanted him to spend some more time in prison, but then plead guilty, and he wasn't really thinking about the prison time. He was like, I cannot plead guilty to something I didn't do. He's like, there's no way I'm going to stand up in a court of law and say I did this. I did not do this, and so he refused it because he won't.
Does he regret that now?
And this is a catch-22 for a lot of defendants, because they're like, I can decide, I can choose to go home by saying I'm guilty. I mean, like, the New York Times has written a whole thing about how innocent people are often pressured to plead guilty just so they can go home.
So what is happening now with the case? So Adnan is obviously still in jail. You are still advocating for him, with getting the word out in your documentary and then your amazing book.
I've got my free Adnan t-shirt on.
I love it. I tried to get 2, by the way.
Oh, you did?
Of course I did.
I love you. That's awesome. So, yeah, I mean, like, we lost, we won 2 appeals. Every time we won, the state appealed it to the higher court, and the final court made their decision last year. We lost by 1 judge. It's a panel of 7 judges, so we lost 3-4, that Adnan would not get a new trial, basically. So, that's all we wanted, was a new trial. And so that means the conviction stands, and what that also means is that these issues that we've been litigating, the Asia issue, and also the cell tower issue to some extent, like, you can't go back and introduce them again. Like, the Asia issue is kind of done. Like, we're kind of done with it because we've hit the end of the road with it, which is awful. So what that means is that now you go to trial. Now you file a new appeal with new issues. And so we have had, since last December, a whole new legal team that's kind of expanded, that is basically deciding what those new issues will be and doing a lot of their own investigation and research. And I'm excited about it because a lot of these things that are being looked at now are issues that I wish had been raised earlier and were not for different reasons. And so I think once we are back in court, people are going to be very excited to see which way the case goes.
And so what is Adnan's life like now? So what is he, how are his spirits? What's happening with him?
Yeah. I mean, look, when we lost last year, I guess it was March, 2019, it was traumatic. It was actually traumatic for all of us. And I couldn't even function. Like, I couldn't even think about the case for 3 or 4 months. I couldn't think about it. I was like I can't. The shock was overwhelming because everybody thought we were going to win, including the state themselves. The attorney general thought we were going to win. That's why he offered the plea deal.
I followed every single step as you were in that courthouse, and after all that drama went down, I was like, every single word, I was like hanging on. I thought that there was no way.
Yeah. There's no way. Yeah, I mean, we had these briefs that supported Adnan's case from like the National Criminal Defense Attorneys Association. I mean, like, so many associations stepped up and said this defendant deserves a new trial. As a juvenile, he was not represented competently. Anyhow, Adnan, I really believe. I mean, I can't diagnose it, but I really think that he actually suffered PTSD afterwards, because for 4 or 5 months he really just couldn't sleep or eat. I think he lost like 40 pounds in a matter of like 6 weeks. When I saw him the first time afterwards, like, his beard had gone gray, and it was pretty shocking. However, those things pass, and he did get much better, and he's in a much better place. But then, of course, COVID hit, and because of COVID, there have been lockdown after lockdown. His family nobody's seen him in person since March.
Wow.
And nobody can see him, and so that's how that's how incarcerated people right now are. They're in a really bad place. But I will say this: this particular prison has been pretty good about keeping, there haven't been any cases. I think maybe there's one, but there have been no deaths in the prison from COVID. Thank God. They've been very careful, but mostly it's because they've just locked people up and they won't let them go near each other, and that can be hard, obviously. So
and his parents, how are they doing?
Especially his mother.
Yeah, Auntie Shamim. I feel like she's my auntie too. Auntie
your
Shamim,
auntie.
how's my
She's
Auntie
everything.
Shamim?
She's Auntie Shamim is one of the most extraordinary people you'll ever meet. I mean, she's just a pillar of grace and strength, and I don't know how she does it. I really don't know.
Yeah.
But every year his parents just get older and older, and it just kills me. It makes me so angry that, my fear is I just want him home before something happens to them. I'm sorry.
No, yeah. I mean, I think everyone feels like that.
Yeah.
So what can we do? Is there anything, all of the viewers, all the people that support you and Adnan and his family, is there anything we can do? Can we sign a petition? Can we write a congressman or a senator or somebody in government? Like, what can we do?
Here's the thing. I will tell you what can be done. I heard your intro about like why this case has captured the attention. The case is captured. Here's the thing. When Serial ended, I knew that was a do or die moment. That if I said, okay, well, they did, Serial's done and that's it now.
Right.
We're like squirrels, our attention would just be gone. Like, we would not care about the case. My job has been to continue to make people care about the case, to continue telling the story. So we did Undisclosed. Then I wrote the book. Then we did the documentary. And I joke, I'm like, listen, if I have to write Adnan Syed the musical next, interested, I will write. And by the way, I'm joking about that kind of, sort of, but Patrick Hines, who I love, is one of my favorite podcasters, has already written like 2 songs for this musical.
Okay, first of all, listen, look how good Hamilton did.
Rabia!
Like, it could be the new Hamilton, but Adnan's story.
Adnan's story, the musical, like a crime. I got to get Patrick on sometime to do this. But basically, we got to keep telling his story, and people. I know it's quiet right now, but I swear to God, there's a lot happening behind the scenes. I still have to write checks for his legal defense for his investigator and attorney. So you guys can support us by going to launchgood.com/freeadnan. You make a one-time donation. You can also, we have a Patreon, which it means like you can give $1 a month or $5 or $10, whatever you want to give. So it's monthly, small amounts, and every month, once or twice a month, I'll post something in there that other people, content, interviews, my own ranting, raving, whatever, so, even conversations with Adnan, that people can support that way. All of the money goes to the legal defense.
Will you send us those links? Because we'll post those all over our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll keep reposting it. We'll keep trying to bring attention to this to as many people that listen to us or want to listen to us as possible.
The one thing I want to say specifically for people who live in Maryland, especially in Baltimore, in 2 years, we're going to have another election for Attorney General and District Attorney or Baltimore State's Attorney. Just remember, this is the Attorney General who decided that after testing Adnan's DNA and seeing nothing matched, that once he had a plea offer on the table, he was willing to let him go, and once they won the court case, basically just went silent on it and has not done any more testing of the DNA. So we have elections coming up, and we need a better attorney general. We need a better state's attorney. We need a political solution, not just to Adnan's case. This would affect many, many, many thousands of defendants to have the right people in these positions.
So vote. Get out there and in 2 years, vote. So besides Adnan, I know that takes up, obviously a lot of your time, but you also, do a lot of other things in your life that are not Adnan related. So tell us a little bit about that in closing. What are you currently doing? What are you working on? Tell us about some new podcasts. Tell us what's happening with you.
The Hidden Gin. We've all been listening, girlfriend. I got you covered.
I love you, Jamie. You're like the best.
I got you covered.
You have lifted my spirits. Like I can't.
I got to check in on you on your podcast. I got to figure out what's happening with Tanvir. There's a lot going in. Auntie Shamim, all my aunts and uncles up in Maryland. That I'm following them all.
Rabia, be careful. Jamie gets so involved.
I'm so involved.
You are now never going to be able to get rid of her.
Never.
When we talk on the show, she's going to be like,
I feel a deep kinship with Jamie, and I feel like I wish you lived closer so we could be besties.
Do you see this? Like, I'm looking at you. I told you before, it's like you're like my sister because I feel like I've known you for so long. That's why I had to check in.
Jamie's my bestie. She's going to ditch me for you. For sure, though.
All right. Oh, no. You can have more than one bestie. I have like 6.
Yeah, but she's going to really like you the most. You're going to be like the number one in the book. But be careful because you're going to wake up in the morning and you're going to have like 50 emails from Jamie.
And I said I wasn't going to
tell us what you're doing.
Tell us about all this stuff. I want to know about the podcast. And then obviously you look so gorgeous. I want to know about...
I haven't even showered today, and I'm so sorry.
What? You look great.
I couldn't get dressed up the way I wanted to. But yeah, look, Undisclosed has continued. That's the podcast I have with the 2 other attorneys, Susan Simpson and Colin Miller. We were just going to cover Adnan's case and then be done, except that we had people from across the country reach out and say, can you look at our case? Innocence Project's So in 5 years, we've covered 22 cases. We've assisted in 9 exonerations, and in 2 cases halting the death penalty. And like we're doing great work. It's the most fulfilling work. But it's really heavy work. I mean, it's heavy work, right? It's like this room is not just full of Adnan's files. It's full of Greg Lance's files, another defendant I love very much, who was the subject of our season last year. And it's an incredible case. I encourage people to check out the Greg Lance case closed. But all of our cases are really horrible for the defendants. But this year I wanted to do a couple of creative projects. I have been being pressured a lot by my publisher to write another book for years, and I was like, I don't know what I want to write. I can't do. Adnan's story is right now, I don't know, 350 or 400 pages. It was 800 pages when I wrote it. And it was 800 pages. I wrote it in 6 months, and I was exhausted, and I was like, I can't, so I decided to write instead a memoir about a lifetime of dealing with weight struggles. And so it's called Fatty Fatty Boom Boom.
Which I love.
Because that was like a childhood nickname.
Oh, no. That's right.
Shame on my family. Shame on my family, but I love them. But it's not going to be like a really deep, dark. I mean, like it's because my life is, yes, always been a constant weight struggle, but also it's been full of food and family and fun.
Like so many of us, right? Yeah. Like our families and our cultures are all like, me, they're always my family. It's like, eat. Are you sad? Let's just eat. Are you excited? We're going to eat.
It's a holiday. Eat. It's a birthday. Eat. Everything's eat.
No, it's and the thing about Muslims is like we don't even drink or like go clubbing. Like it's the only thing we have. The only thing we have is food. We have no alcohol in our lives. Right. So it's like, but at the same, my family would be like, eat, but also you look like you've put on some weight. So it was like a constant, It was a like an extended family project. My weight has been an extended family project my whole life. So I'm in the process of writing the book. It's not done yet. It should be hopefully out next year or so. But also I did something else which was really exciting, and that was produce a new podcast that just started a couple weeks ago called The Hidden Gin.
Yes.
Which it's The Hidden, and Gin is DJINN. It's doing really well on the charts. It's completely out of my wheelhouse. However, it's for people who don't know, everybody knows who the genies are. Like you rub a lamp as a genie. Well, those genies are actually jinn, and the jinn are like a whole race of these supernatural, ancient, terrifying creatures that are people believe in, like in many parts of the world, and they're ancient. And so I just wanted to do something that was spooky, and I love lore. It's one of my favorite podcasts, Aaron Mahnke. So I told him about Jinn, and he's like, let's do this. You all executive produce it. So it's very exciting. It's beautifully produced, and I hope everybody loves it. It's perfect for the fall as you get into Halloween spirit, and you're gonna, it's been so much fun doing it, and it's really turned out to be a very rich, like, educational and interesting podcast.
It definitely is.
My 7th grader, I have a 7th grade girl. I have 2 girls, but the oldest is 7th grade. She listened to Serial podcast, then listened to your podcast. And then she had to pick a book for this book report. Guess what she picked?
Oh, story.
Your book. So she is bringing it to the 7th grade at her Christian private school. I'm sure they're going to be.
What's her name?
Lena Jackson.
Lena. Oh, thank you, Lena. Yeah. You're so lovely.
So she is so excited. And so she's getting ready to start your new podcast because she goes to her room an hour before bedtime and listens to an hour of a podcast. So she is going to start yours this week.
She's like a 7th grader going on into mentally, I feel like she's always she's in 10th grade. So I'm always like, Lena, let's debate this. Tell me what you think about it.
But so she said
she got the book. I was like, tell me everything. What do you think? You're through the first chapter. I want to know what you think.
She said she's going to take notes, and if she finds something else interesting, she'll let you know.
She's going to let you know.
I would love to. Listen, I'll have a conversation with her any day, anytime she wants. I would love it. But I also have a 7th grader. I have an 11-year-old going on 38. I mean, she's very mature as well.
They could be like best friends.
I know what it's like.
My dream come true. So I know we have to go, but so I wanted to just ask, so what keeps you going?
Yes.
What is that drive that continues?
I mean, the drive with it. Look, I've done advocacy work for much of my life, so having a meaningful issue that I focus on and really put in my heart, aside from my actual working job, has always been a part of my life. That's how I live. But beyond that, for Adnan, I mean, the possibility of walking away it can't exist, because the alternative is that he's going to die in prison. Do I accept that alternative? I do not accept that alternative. So as long as it takes, as I don't care how many years, I'm never, ever, ever, ever walking away from this case. And along with Adnan, now I've been pulled into all these other cases and lives, and they are all important and meaningful to me. So, we're not making huge, tremendous changes across the criminal justice system, I think, but we are exposing things that people who listen to Undisclosed are learning things about the system they never knew.
Yes, absolutely.
And one life is worth putting in the effort for. So I just think about Adnan. To me, Adnan is he's still that 17-year-old kid.
Right. I think we all feel like that.
Yeah. Rabia, you, first of all, we loved having you on. You made Jamie cry, which is not that hard to do, but it made for really good live TV.
I cry easily too, I'm sorry.
Will you please come on another time and tell us about another case you're working on? Because we want to keep talking about Adnan, but we also want to be able to highlight some of these other amazing cases you're working on.
I would love to. In the meantime, you guys check out Undisclosed.
Yes.
We're gonna have this fall. The way we do it is we have kind of short series, but then every year we do one very long series, which is 12, 15 episodes. That's coming up this fall. Last year's was the Greg Lance case, so check that out. Joey Watkins is still in prison. Another crazy, awful case. That kid is so innocent. But check out all these cases. And every one of these stories is mind-boggling, shocking. You think Adnan's story is crazy? You haven't even seen the worst of it.
Now I'm going to go home and binge listen to more.
Well, I want to tell you how much I admire you.
Oh, that's
and
so
I'm
sweet, Jamie.
so proud of all the work that you have done. And it's just such a pleasure to see you. And I want you to please send our love to all my aunties and uncles and cousins. And I hope that we keep in touch because I really do. I love you so much, and I really, you literally are changing the world.
I'm about to email you my cell number, so we're gonna keep in touch. And
you're gonna regret that, Rabia.
And you have a Pakistani Muslim family.
Yes, and I can't wait. Even though we're both dieting, I can't wait to eat together with our families because I love you so much.
Yeah. But we're excited.
It's not a diet; it's a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle.
You're right. It's a lifestyle. So when Ramadan, I wanna get together to eat. You know what I'm saying, girlfriend? So. Yeah. But I'm proud of you. Please keep up all the good work, and we are here to support you. Send her love, and if there's anything, ask us.
Love you guys. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you boosting the
Thank
case.
you so much. Thanks, Rabia.
Bye, guys.
She was amazing. You're like Miss Waterworks over there.
I can't even.
That was amazing. She is incredible.
She's incredible.
We have no time left. Judah's pointing at his watch.
I know.
Get off.
I can't what their family has gone through.
I know.
And this case is just.
And she said she's going to come back on the show. I can't wait to hear about all of these other stories and all these other people she's helping.
I know.
So we're going to post on our website and Facebook all the ways that you can help Rabia and Adnan's case by supporting. Financially or getting the word out, please go out and buy her book.
Yeah, like and share the show if you haven't already.
Yes.
Please, we're going to give away copies of Rabia's book, and of course, we're going to do what we can to support her in her efforts.
Next week, we have on Lena McKnight. I am so excited. She is from one of my favorite shows on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Called The World's Toughest Race. Eco Challenge.
If you guys have not watched this,
go
you need
watch
to watch it. It's wild.
It's a very family-friendly show. You guys can all sit down at the end of the day and watch the show together. She was one of the women on one of the U.S. teams that competed in this 10-day, 24-hour eco challenge. So, Lena McKnight, I am shouting out to you. I am so excited to talk to you. I even got a team together.
That's right.
My own team together.
You could be going to Patagonia.
And we submitted a video to be on the next eco challenge in Patagonia. So, Lena McKnight, contact those people. Tell them that my team needs to go.
Can you guys imagine Kelly in Patagonia? She is going to be in charge of...
I'm the camp person.
In charge of the cooking.
Which I've made some good things.
You do. If you please like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram. And if you haven't, you need to follow us on Facebook because we do live cooking shows. And
cocktail shows.
Live cooking and cocktails. And we basically just drink a lot. And Kelly shows me how to use the air fryer, which is fantastic. So
okay, but this Wednesday, unfortunately, you can't make the show this Wednesday. But this Wednesday, I'm going to be doing a dual cocktail hour with my friend Rhonda Reinhardt. She is in Mexico. So she has a bartender in Mexico that's going to show us how to make a very fancy resort drink, and then we'll be talking to her about traveling during COVID. Like, how was she on the plane? How was the airport? How are these resorts? What kind of precautions? She's going out of the country, and she said, as a travel agent, she wanted to go out of the country first before she sent anybody else.
Right.
To make sure it was safe and okay.
I've been following her. And so let's give a shout out to our sponsors.
Yes.
Special shout out. So Panera Bread.
Delish.
Their sandwiches are amazing.
Soup in a sourdough bowl as it's getting colder.
Always go double baguette when you're at Panera. That is always my thing.
Pikasso Swig has these new amazing classes.
Yes, Pikasso Swig. So if you can visit us, for those of you who are newer viewers, I have a little craft store here in Charlottesville, and it's PicassoSwig.com. We do all kinds of kids crafts, all kinds of online classes, and we're getting ready to launch an official wine club.
Yes.
A wine and craft club that is going to be the best.
It's going to be awesome. Yeah. And then Denise Ramey.
Who is
the best realtor in the whole state of Virginia.
We love
She's
you, Denise.
actually coming on our show for an interview in October.
I'm so excited.
Denise Ramey, we are so excited to have you on the show, and so appreciate your sponsorship. And then next week we'll be we have a new sponsor to introduce.
We have a new sponsor.
So you'll see their new logo, and we'll talk about them a little bit. So thank you guys for joining.
Thank you guys so much.
Like our page, share the show, and I'll see you on Wednesday for cocktails, and maybe Jamie and I will see you Friday for some cooking and cocktails.
That's right.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Thanks for watching. Keep changing the world.
Do it. It's a good one.
Jude, I'm going to need a tissue.
It was a good one, guys.